if I could meet my 20-year-old self and if I could give her only one advice, I would say don't pressurize yourself and don't try to control every outcome and do not measure your self worth based on the outcomes you have in your life. Being 20 is very hard because you are literally standing at that point where you are like, you have so many aspirations and dreams, and maybe you are independent for the first time. For example, when I was 20, I was in college, probably second or third year of my college. And I remember I had so many aspirations and dreams. And I used to think when I leave the college, there are so many things that I have to do. But I remember even when I was in college, the comparison is the thief of joy. I would think to myself how people are way better than me. And there was this constant comparison which made me constantly unhappy. I was in one of the best liberal arts colleges of India. I had made it through a crazy cutoff list. But even then, when I was in college and I would compare myself to those people, I would think that, I'm not as good at as them and maybe I do not deserve to be here. There was also a voice within me, that would make me really hopeful for the life that lay ahead of me. And I would think about all the wonderful things that I would be doing with my life. And there are so many things I have to do in my 20s, and there are so many things, I have to be. Like, I couldn't wait to start that life. But as soon as I left college, it that phase was so confusing because when you are in a college getting a degree with a community of people, there is a container in your life and you experience life through that container. You basically don't know what lies ahead. But once you're out of that container, it felt like I was thrown into the real world and I didn't know what to do with my life. And I remember there were like a couple of dreams I had. I wanted to travel a lot. I wanted to start my own business. And I wanted to be someone. And I remember I joined, through the help of a professor, I joined a travel company. And I thought I'll work there for some time because at that time, I was thinking that I'll start a company um, for women travel. And, and I was so happy that I'm going to start working in this travel company. And I was excited. I'm going to go there and I'm going to learn a lot of things. But I remember that once I joined that company, it was not what I had expected. To my 20-year-old self who had no experience, 21-year-old self who had no experience working anywhere, I thought that I would be put in a container where I will learn all the ropes of this business and everything that goes on. But I was like literally treated as an entry level person where you have to work with files and do all those boring things. And I was so unhappy with myself. And even finding myself in that position, I thought I had like failed somehow. I had failed somehow, and I found myself in that job for like about month and a half, and it had taken me some time to get that job. And by the time, I'm figuring that out, like 6 months were gone. My friend who was junior to me had already finished a semester. So this ticking time, that feeling like came for the first time. By the time I'm leaving this company, I'm 22 years old. And that feels like the end of the world, because my friends, some of them have gone abroad to Cambridge and Oxford and all those fancy universities. But I want to start a business and I have absolutely no idea what I was doing. I remember talking to my dad once in this time period, and I said, you know what, I really want to start a business. And, I said, could you help me with finances? And he told me one thing. He said, I financed your education and you have two more siblings. I'm not sure if I can help you there. And the enthusiasm a 21-year-old girl had, it's like, no problem. I'm gonna make it happen uh, on my own. At that time, I didn't realize what journey was I like starting, like this very, very hard journey of building a business. Um, and sometimes I think my father was very strategic. Maybe he wanted me to do a master's degree or something like that, and maybe he made the right call. And I just knew that I am in this journey on my own. And the next 3 years, after that job in a travel company, I decided to volunteer. It's a very funny story. I didn't decide to volunteer, I was very unhappy. And I desperately wanted an international experience. I had never gone on an international, I won't say trip, but I had never been international. So, so many of my friends were studying abroad, and I was like, what if I could get some opportunity where I could go abroad? And it reminds me of a story when I was in my third year. A friend of mine came to me and he said, hey, I'm going to France in May, and my aunt has said you could bring a friend along, and he said, I gave your name. To a person who's like one of the goals was to travel, I remember at that time, I was so happy. I was like, oh my God, this is such an amazing opportunity. And I was like, yeah, I'll make it happen. And yeah, so basically, he told me that, but then he didn't keep his word. He took someone else, which was very heartbreaking for a 21-year-old girl. I don't know why he would promise something like that to me, or even like he just knew how much I loved traveling. And I was so mad at him. I don't even know why I forgave him for that back then. But when I think about me, uh, 21-year-old girl back then now, and how my heart was broken when I learned that he was taking someone else, even after getting me so pumped up about it. Um, yeah, it just breaks my heart. But coming back to this story where I hate the job and I want to do something with my life, and I'm like, okay, let's try something international. And I didn't know how to make that happen. I had absolutely no idea. Either I had to go for a master's degree, which I didn't want because I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, basically. I wanted to have a business, but I had no idea how I would have that business. And I remember just, searching on Google opportunities online, internships online. Um, I guess there was a website where they asked for your email ID and phone, and I don't even remember filling it. And I think 2 months passed, and someone is calling me and is like, hey, is this so and so? You had filled up an application for an international volunteer program. And I'm like, yeah, that's me. And she's like, let me tell you about it and let me send you the details. So it was everything covered, just I had to do my tickets, that's it. And I was like, finally, something is happening in my life. And I remember December of 2016, I flew to Istanbul for the first time. And there was this volunteer program um, in collaboration with Pamukkale University. And I volunteered at a school, teaching them for um, 2 months. And then I stayed in Istanbul as well. So basically, it was a leadership program, and we got to teach also. I got to meet um, people from all around the world. Like, we were a group of 20 with 10 to 12 nationalities, which was amazing and one of the first experiences I had ever had. And as a 20-year-old in Istanbul and in Turkey, I think one of the happiest periods of my life. But that dip, that you feel after it was over, I was like, oh my God, what next? I really like to be in a container because you don't have to think about what's after that. And I just had to build my business. And I remember coming back to my hometown and reconnecting with my best friend and saying, hey, let's start a business. And we started with a fashion, like, let's start with something related to our hometown. And our hometown has so many arts and crafts and history. And we were like, let's do something about it. Again, 22-year-olds, really excited about life. I had no money. She had money. I was like, I'm gonna do all the work. You just put the money. I'm gonna focus on all the other things. And she was like, okay. And I thought to myself that somehow we'll have a business. Somehow we'll have a business, and somehow we'll be really rich with this business, and then we'll travel the world. Fast forward 3 years, nothing happens. And I think those 3 years were one of the most difficult periods of my life because my heart knew the business would work out, but there was no evidence of it in my real life. And I was broke, and no one would give me, like, I couldn't expect money from anyone. And I was just making ends meet. It was really, really, really hard. Like, I took some part time jobs here and there trying to figure stuff out. It was really, really hard. I remember there was a time I was 24, 25 at that time. I was like, oh my God, what am I doing with my life? If nothing works out for me, what am I going to do? Like, what will I do with my life? And the idea of going to a job would just make me so sick. Like, I didn't want to do it. And then the business was not working. And I had absolutely no idea what to do. And I started being so hard on myself. I really hated myself. I just felt so unworthy. Like, my friends had like reached to the different parts of the world, and I didn't know what I was doing. Um, so, but 2020 is the year I'm 25 years old, and finally, after failing multiple businesses, I realized that marketing is one thing I don't know. And I remember, to promote the brand I had started with my friend, um, I was watching a lot of YouTube videos on how to market. And one thing led to another. I saw this guy who was great at e-commerce, and he would sell his products online, jewelry brands, other brands, stuff like that. And he had a program where he's like, I'm gonna teach you how to run a brand. And I was like, wow, I think I should really learn this because this is the missing point. I remember going to my mom and literally begging her for money. Please let me invest in this. And she said, you have wasted years of your life. You have nothing to show for yourself. Why should I give you this money? And what makes you think you'll succeed with at it? And I was like, please believe me, I'm gonna make it work and I'm gonna return this money to you. I enrolled in that program. It was a high ticket program, and I invested around 1500 USD in that. And then the internet in my hometown was shut down because this is a politically volatile zone where I live in. Can you imagine investing so much money and not being able to access that program, which is just for 3 months? I remember my friend coming to my home because we couldn't even call each other. Phones were shut down, internet was shut down. We couldn't even call each other. And one morning, like people would commute before like 4 a.m. to 8 a.m. because otherwise the entire area would be on a curfew. And she one day, like she's knocking the door of my house. She's at my home at 5:30, and I'm shocked. And she's like, "You have invested this money. You need to go. You need to do a ticket, and you need to go somewhere. You need to go out of state to access this information. You have given so many years to it. You should go." And I guess, I had some money. I booked a ticket. I crashed my friend's place and I started learning marketing, like how to market my brand. And I remember going through that course, like I had to take a part-time job to support myself outside my city. And then whenever I have time, I'm going through this program and I realize there's no way this brand is going to take off. Because even though I'm learning marketing, but the amount of money we need to take this off, it's we just don't have it. And I was so devastated. This is 2019, and ending of 2019, I think it was my lowest low. I just didn't know what I would do. Ending of 2019, I'm 24 years old. Um, but in 2020, things start to turn around. The same guy who was teaching physical products was like, I'm going to teach you how I sold my digital products as well. And by this time, I was like, I know that I'm onto something. I know that I will learn marketing and selling and I will make something of myself. And I did realize how important marketing and selling was because guess what? No business works without it. And so I don't have money to purchase this program. And my same friend, I call her, I said, this is what it is. Like, I might have to borrow some money. And it was so hard for me to do that. And it was just so hard. Like, my ego, my self respect, everything was crushed. And I was like, this is my last chance. I have to make it work. 2016 is the year I graduated. 2020 is when I made my first proper sale where I got paid 100 USD for my first sale. And where that is where things started to kind of take off in that industry. And I mastered my skills and I learned a lot about marketing and sales. I I tapped into coaching industry where people have so many skills, so many hobbies, but they wanted to build a digital product, market their products, sell their products. So those are all the skills that I had learned in 2020. By 2021, I was enrolling clients consistently. In 2021, I remember a friend of mine had joined corporate in India, and he had worked day and night. And at the end of the year, he said, "Hey, how much money do you have in your account?" And when I told him, he said, "Oh my God, your life is way better than mine. You work on your own schedule, you work lesser hours, yet you have like three, four times more money than me." And yeah, but it was 2021, ending of 2021, when things started to work out. It took time, right? It took time. I used to think that I'm gonna leave college and be someone in 2 years. It doesn't happen. And then I was not a person who wanted to do what I didn't want to do. So figuring out my path took time, but I was so hard on myself. I just was so desperate that something should work out for me. And making money was such a priority for me. I mean, I didn't come from a family where I would be taken care of. Like, I had to make my own money to live the kind of life I wanted to live. So, I cannot explain it to you how um, important it was for me to make my own money. 2022, 23, 24, my business really took off. I made six figures in the span of 3 years. And from India, it's just a lot of money. Everything that I invested back in my business came from my business. Everything. And if you know consultation niche, you know how expensive it is. You don't get anything below $5,000 if you really want to work with best coaches. I traveled to different countries. I lived on a beach. Um, I I bought all my like expensive electronic gadgets, from my MacBook to my iPhone to everything else that was important to me. But I wish I had celebrated everything throughout this journey. I didn't celebrate myself enough. I didn't celebrate myself um, when I hit the smaller milestones. I guess I was so perpetually wanting to make it big that I did not celebrate myself enough. And that is what I feel sad about. My early 20s were very difficult in terms of career and who I wanted to be. My late 20s, I did find stability in money. I had something of myself, I had a business, but I didn't celebrate myself enough. I would always look at what is it that I don't have. There's someone else. If I've gone to 3 countries, they've gone to 10 countries, so I'm a failure somehow. If I've made 100K in 3 years, there are people who are making 300K in 1 year. So maybe I've not done enough. But what I didn't credit myself for is that I come from a politically volatile small place. I was not even born in an Indian city where you have a lot of perks. I was not born in United States. I was born in a very small place called Kashmir, which is politically volatile. And I didn't have so many opportunities growing up. I made best use of whatever was given to me, and I believed in myself even when I could have given up on building a business. And that was my dream for 20s, and that's not my dream anymore. But I did it. I had freedom of location, freedom of time. Even right now, that I want to record videos, get better at storytelling, have time to learn and put into it, is because I have a business that's giving me freedom. But I never really patted myself on the back. And I wish I had. I wish I had celebrated every milestone. I did learn to celebrate myself, but for most part of my 20s, I was very hard on myself. And I don't. That is something I wish I hadn't. I wish I hadn't been hard on myself. I wish I had celebrated every small milestone. I wish I had celebrated starting a business and failing a business, and starting over again and failing again and starting again and failing again. And finally, when I made a sale, I wish I had celebrated it more than I did. I wish I had patted myself on my back for every breakthrough year. I didn't. I always compared myself to people who were ahead of me, and I always beat myself up for it. Not anymore. Now that I'm 31, not anymore. It's not worth it. It's not worth it. I now know that we are not, when we say make best use of 20s, live your best life in 20s, what matters is not just the outcome. What matters is what you believe and how you navigate it. Because life will anyway eventually get you to the point where you are supposed to be. Life does that. And we think we have so much in our control. We think we have so much in our control. We don't. And I'm not saying it because I don't want you to have goals or dreams and I don't want you to work on them. I'm saying this because even when you have goals and dreams and you're committed to them, even when you're failing, and even when you're believing in yourself, even if nothing is working out for you at the moment, life with its own wisdom will still take you where you are meant to be. Life in its own wisdom will still give you wins. Yes, your goal is to be true to yourself. Yes, your goal is to be true to your path. But life takes you where you want to be. If we look at the entire life and billions of years, we are just a blink in the history of the universe. And yet, we overthink so much, thinking so much is in our control, when it's not, and we make ourselves miserable. My theory about life is this: follow your heart and what God has put in your heart, but then be detached with the outcome and just be very happy with everything you are doing in being true to yourself, because life moves like a river. It will take you to the ocean. It will, because that's the nature of life. And I wish I could tell my 20-year-old self that, so that through every failure, I would not beat myself up. And I would know it. I know it now. Through every high and low, now that I'm 31, I, I won't lie to you and I won't say that I never feel behind. I do. But that I know it's fear and I don't give in to that. I don't make myself miserable about it because I know life is taking me to where I'm supposed to be. That was a lot on 20s. I hope you enjoyed it. And let me know how your experience in 20s is going and how your 20s were like.